A full-blown Wilsonian in 1983 when he read 21 of Colin's books in a single year. He followed this with a further 10 in 1984. He's lived in Glastonbury since 1995 and is actively immersed in its ongoing mystical, mythological, historical alchemy as author, lecturer, and tour guide. He's written a number of books. Some are at the back of the room if you want to look at them. Aleister Crowley and the Aeon of Horus, the Occult Battle for Britain, Babylonian Aeon, to name a few. A long-term ongoing writing project, the Colin Wilson work, concerns his own response to Colin Wilson's material. And his talk is intriguingly entitled The Psychoactive Voltage of Beyond the Occult. Paul Weston.
Yeah, everybody, such a blast to be here today. On Thursday, October the 18th, 1990, I started to read Beyond the Occult. I was living in an upstairs flat in a roadhouse house in Southend, alone. I'd set myself up the coming weekends to do a complete immersion. And on the morning of Sunday, October the 21st, I settled into the chapter called Intrusions that concluded with material on synchronicity, including examples featuring books and the usual indications that time and space sometimes seem to function in unusual ways. There were cases of what Wilson referred to as the library angel, a phenomenon he previously discussed in the occult whereby relevant information presented itself to researchers in a startling manner, such as a book falling off a shelf over a page featuring the necessary material. There are suggestions that the intensity of consciousness brought to a topic, especially if it is an unusual one concerning mysteries of the mind, may help to generate these perplexing and inspiring events that usually carry a profound emotional charge. When I reached the end of the Intrusions chapter, I stopped for a food break around noon, and I looked idly, as I thought, at the TV listings of the day in a local newspaper. It was just a whole bunch of advertisements, a free thing that came through the door. It had a couple of TV pages, and I noticed that the 50s movie, the night my number came up, was about to be shown in half an hour's time, and I instantly decided to watch it. Now I knew this movie, and I knew the story that was associated with it, because it's based on the true story of a remarkable case of dream pre-privileged. I was half expecting Gary was going to mention it because it's such a famous court case. Air Marshal Sir Victor Goddard at the end of the Second World War was waiting in an airport lounge at the Far East for a plane, and he heard someone talking, saying that Victor Goddard is dead, and he was most surprised by this. Talked to the guy in question, who was initially embarrassed. It turns out he had a complicated dream involving a bunch of people, a very specific cast of characters in terms of how many there were going to be on a plane that was going to crash off an island. There was a whole series of details on it. And Goddard started talking to him. They started having a chat about a dumb series of time. But he was happy because the details didn't match up with the plane that he was getting on. But then a whole bunch of things happened. Other people joined the flight. He became increasingly convinced he was going to die. The plane did go down, but he survived. That was the only thing that was different about it. So it's profoundly interesting. During the closing credits of the movie, Channel 4 kind of say, look, tonight in our long-running Equinox series, called Mind Benders. We've got this particular episode about brain research, cutting edge technology. I thought, I'll watch that later on. This was, 5 or 6 hours later on. So I resumed my reading of Beyond the Occult. Intrusions was followed by Memories of the Future, dealing with preconditions. Suddenly you can guess where this is going, because less than half an hour after I finished watching that movie, Colin is talking about that exact case. He mentions the movie. It didn't get played on TV that often in those days. Maybe once a decade even. So I thought, this is cool, this set me up a treat. And I read all through the afternoon, punctuated by my meal, and settled into Mind Benders. Now, Mind Benders featured a book called Mega Brain, and it's author Michael Hutchinson, a work that deals with what was then the cutting edge research on brain machines, nutrition supplements, boost mental performance. I'm a subs junkie from way beyond that time, so I was very interested in that. Never heard of the book, never heard of the author, and after watching the documentary, resolved to finish Beyond the Occult before going to bed. And towards the end, Michael Hutchinson and Mega Brain are mentioned Beyond the Occult. Now, I'm not absolutely certain about this, but I don't recall Colin mentioning this in any other books. But my reading and the TV have come together, and it was totally exhilarating to have generated 2 synchronistic experiences in one day from the text of a single book, a newspaper, and my TV set, without leaving my living room or having any contact with anybody. I'd started reading this 3 days before, so that the actual timing of how I came to those things in sequence, and the fact that I needed to pick up that TV paper, and I needed to see the end credits of the movie, it was all, it had played with absolute perfection for my edification and entertainment. And in the account that I later wrote of it, I put in italics that it felt like something out of a Colin Wilson book. The actual material that formed the basis of the event concerned increased brain function, precognition of some kind, and a general sense that time and space isn't what consensus reality might portray it to be. And it had been preceded by stories of synchronicities involving books. And I also like that it came from the final part of what came to be known as the Occult trilogy. This was a wonderful conclusion to my journey with this material. I first read the Occult in 1978. The general feeling that I took from it at the time was that I had in effect graduated from being a reader and enthusiast to someone in whom the subject matter was now alive and at work. So this is kind of like a preamble now. This is part 2 is the real part of this talk. And it shows intensification and expansion of the library angel process, a hint of Ouspensky in 4D time, and it also runs with perhaps the most notable and controversial aspects of Beyond the Occult, the affirmation of the reality of life after death. So fast forward 10 years, I'm living in Glastonbury. I'm working for the butcher at Speaking Tree, which was also a wholesale business, and I'm at a stall in the Crop Circle Conference of 2000 on July the 29th, and I'm working that stall because I know I get a free ticket to see all the lectures, and I know Colin Wilson is going to be there that night. And this is what I call the golden Indian summer period of From Atlantis to Sphinx and Alien Dawn. I was absolutely, I got all warm and fuzzy about the fact that Colin had produced such absolute corkers at this stage of the game. I love those books. And we had a few copies of Alien Dawn, Speaking Tree, and I was sitting at the stall with a copy of Alien Dawn reading it. I had no idea what Colin's movements were going to be, but suddenly there he was standing in front of me. So the first time that I ever had any direct connection with Colin Wilson, I've literally got his book, Alien Dawn, in my hands. I just thought, this is freaking wonderful. Now, I wanted to bend his ear roll for 5 hours on a whole number of things, but I thought, no, let the guy have his space. I'm going to see him tonight. And he gave a classic Wilsonian lecture of that time. I think there is a YouTube lecture of him talking from the outside of through to From Atlantis to Sphinx, dates a couple of years earlier. It was kind of that nature. So that was absolutely wonderful. July the 29th, 2000. I just started writing my big autobiographical story, Avalonian Eon. Although it's telling my story of my immersion in the festival, my adventures with Andrew Colin's psychic questing, it's also an introduction to a whole bunch of Glastonbury subjects, and this included the anthology Ancient Avalonian Jerusalem, edited by Anthony Roberts, that had, certainly this edition, had an afterword by Colin Wilson. And it was compiled, there's deliberately 12 articles to mirror the supposed 12 hides of land given in the legend of Joseph Arimathea, and also the 12 signs of the contentious alleged landscape Zodiac. So the 1977 edition's got this afterword by Colin. It surveys the Earth mystery scene at the time, Alfred Watkins, lays, dowsing, pendulums. I don't think it was too much of a stretch for him to write this thing. He was on mysteries at the time. It's like he's just scooting stuff out of mysteries. And at the end, he's not even sure about the Glastonbury Zodiac. I don't know about this. But there we are. And I found Tony Roberts a very interesting guy indeed. He'd also done something of considerably different mode, The Dark Gods, with Jeff Gilbertson. He's got a lengthy intro by Colin. I gather he wasn't that struck on the book. I'm not surprised, it's a bit goddamn creepy. It's very conspiratorial, to say the flipping least. Now this cover, this is the original edition by a guy called Tom Edison, and you might be able to just make out at the top right hand corner, next to the title, there's this face, and that's supposed to be Aleister Crowley. It's very, very paranoid. It suggests that malevolent entities have been messing with our heads since the dawn of history. Lovecraft, for various reasons, is one of their sort of unwitting pawns. John Keel's Mothman Prophecies is a big influence. Pretty much every single esoteric group in the Western tradition reeks of diabolism and general contamination. That includes even dear old Rudolf Steiner. So it's a bit much, but there we are. Now, Tony Roberts achieved a legendary transition when he died of a heart attack on Glastonbury tour in daylight during an eclipse of the full moon in February 1990. Here he is with his wife Jan, sort of generally touting the wares of Glastonbury back in the 70s. In 2010, we're jumping forward now, in 2010 as I was completing Avalonian Eon, it took 10 years to write, which includes a potted bio of Tony and stuff about what I've just been talking about. I discovered that Jan was the person in charge of the Montessori nursery school that my eldest son was attending, and that their daughter Cassie was looking after my boy. So I made a point of saying, well, look, I know all about Tony and writing this book. And we arranged that I would give a copy of it to her when we met up in the 100 Monkeys cafe in Glastonbury High Street. And conversation turned to the Dark Gods. Now I said to her that I hadn't really said all that much about the Dark Gods in Avalonian Eon, but I had featured it in my Aleister Crowley in the Inner Horus. Now, as I spoke those very words, I noticed that her expression changed and she was looking intently at something over my shoulder behind me. Because she had become aware, as I had literally said, the Dark Gods, that Tom Edison, the artist responsible for the original cover work, was sitting on the other side of the cab. And she had not seen him for 30 years since the book came out. And this was obviously very striking, so she went over and said hello to him, leaving me to think, what is going on here then? Because, you know, my take on Aleister Crowley is very different from Tony Roberts and also from Colin Wilson's. I'm a Robert and Wilson kind of guy. I'm known in certain quarters as the bloke that read Cosmic Trigger 29 times, and my Crowley book is reflective of that. But this was very, very strong. So what's going on? What's going on? By the end of 2012, Jan started selling Tony's massive book collection to Speaking Tree, and they started turning up in Courtyard Books, and you could tell that they were his because of the fact that they'd got his signature and maybe a little comment, date on them. the Glastonbury Occult Conference gone through a few changes, but for a couple of years it was the Glastonbury Day of the Dead, and it was held at the beginning of November. And in 2012, during a lunch break, I just idly again, so I thought, wandered over to Courtyard Books and found Beyond the Occult. I almost kind of knew the minute I opened the cover it was Tony Roberts, so I bought it. And even at that point, I was encouraging something. I had this feeling something was going on, and I was encouraging it by buying this. So it's February the 9th, 2013, just a few months on from that, and it's the anniversary of Tony Roberts' death. And I go and Courtyard Books, and I immediately start Goblin Universe, and I think, I'll bet that's Tony Roberts' death. And it was, and again I bought it, and my reasons for buying it was because I intuited that this was a motif of a waking dream that was trying to communicate something to me. Because Ted Holliday died of a heart attack as well, and of course, as many of you will know, the fact that this book even existed, because it was never published during his lifetime, was very strongly due to Colin Wilson. And he wrote what was arguably his best ever introduction to any book, with the introduction to Goblin Universe, which has, I'm glad to say, resurfaced again in Colin's anthology of Colin's introductions. So I started buying deliberately, various books that had been Tony's, like the Mothman Prophecies and Morning of the Magicians. There's this goddamn thing again. I'm walking down Glastonbury High Street and I spot Yuri Leach, who's the artist responsible for my book covers, and he's standing outside Courtyard Books. So we start having a chat, and then I realise this thing's in the window. It's one of the originals. I mean, these days it sells for silly money, but in those days I think it was about 20 quid or so. After I talked to Yuri, I went in and said, "Can I look at this?" Not only is it signed by Tony, it's signed by Jeff Gilbertson as well, but he signed it 2 years later, so it's got an interesting history. But at this point, I'm kind of saying, what is this? It's definitely Tony Roberts, but there's also Colin Wilson as well. What is kind of going on here? So this is the original 1976 edition of Glastonbury Ancient Avalon New Jerusalem. It hasn't got the Colin Wilson afterward. I heard from Jan Roberts quite soon after all this. It's like spring 2013. She said she wanted to publish a new edition. She had the copyright on their edition, but she didn't have the copyright with the Colin Wilson. Afterward, she'd have to exclude that. Would I write an introduction? I thought, well, okay then. This sounds very interesting. I would do this. And there was something very dreamlike about it. And the project was intended to be a collaboration between myself as Avalonian Eon Publications, through which I'd done my previous books, and Gareth Mills of Speaking Tree. And we met in Glastonbury Abbey on April the 30th, 2013. This is quite deliberate. This is Bill A. This is how we do stuff there. I said, what I'm going to basically do is I will write an introduction that's about 35, 40 pages long by the time of the sun solstice. And I'll commission Yuri Leach to create a cover of a projected new anthology that reflects the old one. Got that there. Yeah. So what you see there, this is like a version of the Crowley Sun Tarot card, with the signs of the Glastonbury Zodiac magnet. It clearly reflects the original. And that was an absolute corker. So I settled down to do this, and Jan had recently looked for the first time in many years at a 300-page manuscript that Tony had written following a remarkable UFO experience in 1969. Never been publicised, never even been talked about. Just outside London, he and Jan, driving along in a car, twilight, and they had seen an astonishing psychedelic display of lights in the sky. Now, I wasn't there, I know Jan. If she says, no, this has nothing to do with any airport, this is not planes. They got out of that car and they looked at this thing for about 20 minutes, and Jan was crying, and it was like some kind of religious experience. And then a couple of days later, Tony's on his way to work, gets knocked off his scooter by a car, and this is not untypical of the BHG associated with close encounters. So he has 6 months off work, goes into a massive sort of download experience where he starts writing this humongous, great book that he create as a personal manuscript. This is just so 1970s. It's like wallpaper, the radio, everything about it. Provisionally called Giants in the Earth, it is said by him to be a historical synthesis and speculative imagination concerning new Atlantis, lost continents, radiant 15-foot tall aliens walking the earth amongst us, a whole bunch of stuff relating to the colonies of Atlantis, of Egypt, Britain, the Americas. He never finished it. He wrote about the Great Pyramid being built by the magical powers of the Atlantean adepts and the giants in 15,000 BC, using levitation, telekinesis, and vibrational manipulation of sound. On the one hand, of course, in terms of where we've got to now, this is just crazy old stuff. But some of this ends up verbatim in Atlantic traditions in ancient Britain, Sons of Thunder, which has recently been, Sons of Thunder, an inspiration for Hugh Newman of Megalithomania's work on giants. But none of this stuff is going to pass muster by our standards of today. I was the first person to read this text outside the Roberts household in 40 years, and I spent about 2 months immersed in Giants in the Earth and a number of classic texts of what I was calling Earth Mysteries UFOlogy, the likes of Desmond Leslie, Brinsley Portraits, John Michel, discussing ley lines, alleged terrestrial zodiacs, and it felt like at that time my own version of the Path of the Dragon section in Mysteries. And I had Tony's copy of Morning and the Magicians with me, and it felt like Giants was a triumph of what's called in that book fantastic realism. And I'm really, really pleased that I was able to read this thing in exactly the right spirit. I loved it, even though by most criteria on one level it was bonkers. I loved reading that book, and I loved the whole sense of the Glastonbury Zodiac and millennial ufology being a massive, great feature that's fallen off the radar in terms of the development of the town as Mystic Centre, Mystic Capital. And I also got further into Dark Gods, and I had Tony's copy of the Mothman prophecies that he had when he was writing that book, just on my bookshelf right next to me, and dealt with major late 1970s UFO paranoia, where people just bailed on the subject in this country and decided that UFOs were the angels of the Antichrist and so forth. This is the background to Dark Gods. And I did what I said I was going to do. I completed it at the solstice, and the image of the Glastonbury Sun card, I put it up all over social media on the summer solstice 2013, and I moved on with another one of my projects. I think I was probably writing the Occult back in Britain at the time, and waited for Gareth Mills to do what his part of the task was, which was he needed to have the whole thing scanned. It was very complex, there's loads of pictures and diagrams in it. He was scanning as far afield as India to try and find people that would maybe do it. I left it with him. End of 2013, Colin departs, and I go completely and utterly berserk on a Wilson blitz. I read the Occult mysteries back to back in a week, Order of Assassins in a day, all that kind of thing. And I got this book project going, which started off with the idea of it being like one of these 100-page sort of intros to Gurdjieff or Ouspensky or Crowley or Jorma Steiner, or something like that. And I mocked up the cover. You can see the colour is kind of a homage to Mysteries. I've got the text is exactly the same font as the classic paperbacks. And I licensed the use of that photo for the National Portrait Gallery. I'm very strong on the cover art of my books, and I wanted to sort of have that existing hyperspace and pull towards it. So in 2014, during the same months I've been writing my anthology introduction, I started writing the Colin Wilson work. So the publication of this new edition of the anthology had stalled, but by the end of 2014, I contacted the organisers of the Glastonbury Symposium with a proposal to give a presentation on the contents of the intro. I was right. And being as it was the 25th anniversary, they were really happy to have a retro, you know, but there was nothing happening with the book project. I said to Gareth, look, you know, we've got 6 months, we could launch this thing at the conference, it'd be great. He said, all right, I'll get on it. By the time we get to June the 23rd, 2015, it's a month away, it's not going to happen. I'm a little bit sad, because so be it. I understood that Gareth's a very busy guy. He's, you know, dealing with emails to multiple countries at 6 o'clock in the morning. It's thousands and thousands of pounds of fee, a whole bunch of stuff. It's very complicated, I accepted that situation. I met Jan Roberts in the 100 Monkeys again for the first time since that event in 2010 to get some pictures from her of Tony that I would scan to use in the presentation. You've already seen a few today. And I suddenly had this crazy idea because I'm self-published and I deal directly with a publisher, the guys like my graphics man. I wonder, could I pump up my introduction to the form of a decent sized book, 100, 120 pages? Isn't it possible I could do that? It's only a month. The next day I checked in with my publisher, I checked in with my graphics man. It was exactly a month, the conference. I have a fortnight to do this if I wanted to happen. Challenge accepted. So I had some stuff, Andy Colin's Glastonbury Zodiac material, a survey of the American visionary Robert Colin, who was a great friend of Tony Roberts, and is primarily responsible for this modern idea of Glastonbury as the hard shack for the world, all this sort of stuff. I chuck it all in there. And I was taking ufological material out of my Crowley book, stripping its dynamic impressions, and now including it into a book focused on Tony Roberts, which made me feel like the whole thing had been hanging in hyperspace for I don't know where. And in my Crowley book, I'd actually written quite a bit about Ted Holiday, and I'd got a section in there called Chapel Perris, Adventures in the Goblin Universe. So there was something all coming together there. And I did it, there it is. I've got a few copies over there. I think a few of you have already bought one. Glastonbury Zodiac and Earth Mysteries UFOlogy on July the 24th, 2015. I launched it with that cover image initially inspired by the old anthology, with Jan Roberts in attendance. I told Tony's story, primarily the 1969 UFO encounter with the photos that she'd given me permission to use. And there I am. It was all filmed, it's on YouTube. Please find it from my website, westglastonbury.com. With all this, there was kind of a major WTF feeling hanging in the airwaves. It was almost exactly 15 years old from my Colin Woodson Alien Dawn connection, July the 29th, 2000. And there was a complex inscrutability. It felt like back in July 2000, the pencil tip made a mark on flatland. Beyond Path of the Dragon, it felt like my book, The Glastonbury Zodiac and Earth Mysteries UFOlogy, was a very strangely resonant with From Atlantis to the Sphinx, Alien Dawn. It was where there were even sections of Morning Magicians in both of them. And I remembered, you know, what John Michel had said about the whole ufological phenomenon. You can't understand ever what it actually really is. You have to look at its effects. And one of the things I've written about in the book was that it was a carrier wave that somehow helps to mutate people's consciousness and put them into a certain state of mind. People, once they believed that UFOs were following ley lines, they went out to ancient sites, they started becoming interested in the folklore of the ancient sites, they started becoming interested in the history, and something moved on. You know, it was, David was saying, evolutionary metaphor somehow. All this combination of things set you off in a particular way. And I remembered, I was very conscious of an idea about Ouspensky. Now, Colin has an awful lot to say about Ouspensky in time, but I'm not absolutely 100% of this, on this, but I don't remember him ever talking about the concept of the long body, the linga shariras. Sanskrit term, it's used by Blavatsky, but Ouspensky makes his own thing of it. It's the time body, the long body. It's like the fourth dimensional form, if you like, in which your entire life is contained time-wise. And I realised that, in June 2015, in the weeks leading into when I made the decision to complete this book, I've been going in Glastonbury Abbey, reading Maurice Nicoll's Living Time, and I've been listening to albums by a guy called David Hike. That's not David Icke, David Hike and the Harmonic Choir, which is Tibetan overtone, chanting, doing Christian Kyries, Hallelujahs, all that kind of stuff. It's absolutely incredible. I've been going in there, sitting in the Edgar Chapel down the far end on the bench and listening to this and reading Maurice Nicoll. And I've got a quote in Avalone here on a different understanding of time and a different feeling of I are linked together. I had this feeling that there was something kind of, it was an expression of something here. I was calling it extrasensory existentialism. It was how you actively engage with these intrusions. Because I'd sought out, I bought these books. I bought The Goblin Universe on the exact anniversary of Tony Roberts' death, and Ted Holiday died of a heart attack. I'd seen The Dark Gods, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm not saying that none of this would happen if I hadn't done that, but I think there's an emotional tone that kicks in when you engage in that sort of activity. And this was my general feeling. And see, Colin Wilson wrote an introduction to Dark Gods. He didn't particularly like the book. He wrote an afterword to the UFOlogy, and he wasn't really that fussed about the idea of Glastonbury Zodiac. I understand from Jan that he and Colin never even met, but there was something that lingered in the airways between them. And I, as a person already giving an unusual type of attention to both of them, was able to partake in that mystery and express and enhance it further. And there was a Colin Wilson full stop on this, if you like, that affirmed this very soon afterwards. My ex, the mother of my children, she used to do this thing called mystery shopping, where you go and secretly film retail outlets, and she used to sort of do these little excursions into the southwest, and we would accompany her, me and the kids. I'd play with the kids on the beach, she'd go off and do something. It was our youngest son's birthday on the 1st of August, and she said, well, we're going to go out this little holiday camp down in Cornwall, we'll have his birthday there, and we're going further on from that after that. I didn't really ask where we were going. And after we'd done this thing, we're heading further down to Cornwall on the 2nd of August, where we're going, Mevagissey. I think, hang on a minute, that's Colin Wilson territory, ain't it? If it goes all right, if the job goes all right, can we perhaps try and find Glastonbury? Can I try and make my way to the end of his driveway as a point of pilgrimage? So there I am on August 2nd, 2015. That is just over a week after I've launched that book. And as per 1990, it felt like I had fully entered a new phase of my connection with all this material. And it's like, well, what then happens? So, Gary was talking about COVID, what did we do during the lockdown? I felt that the best thing I could possibly do was immerse myself in Colin Wilson, get more into the writing. And as a result of this, I had what I can only describe as a brainstorm, like the crazy idea, it might still not prove to be entirely practical, that I wanted to expand my book into something besides one of the books in the Occult trilogy, some monster great brick of a book. And I'd had some immense brainstorms stimulated by the idea of the long body, the time body, related to Colin Wilson's interaction with Robert Graves. And I road tested some of this material this year, did a search, actually could find that if you're interested on my website. It's over about an hour and a quarter long, there's a lot of imagery. I'm quite proud of my material on the Graves Wilson interaction. And especially being as the thing that really clinched it for me was material that I already knew about, and I'd read about 20 years before in Avalone Hill, which is when Robert Graves met the rock musician David Allen at Dale, and what passed between them 3 years before he met Colin. I knew this all that time, but sometime in 2020, it all went bonkers for me. And there's another one, history, meditations, etc., all provoked by reading the Occult. So, what I'm very conscious of, you see, it's when I got this invitation, I thought, what am I going to talk about? A number of different things I could have talked about. I have deliberately chosen all of this subject matter because it's absolutely obvious that this is now part of that story. Me standing here talking to you about all of this is clearly part of the same story, whatever it is, whatever that part may. Now, when it comes to this whole idea of the linear Sharia, the time body, the long body, if we're talking about the Husserlian transcendental ego, or we're talking about the daimon, it doesn't, it's not centred in some linear third dimensional space. I don't think you can't characterise the long body as something that's got a head and arms and legs, but using language cautiously, I would say that the daimon, the transcendental ego, are potentially an attribute, a function of the long body. And when it comes to how the intrusions work, that is an expression of all of this. This little story of these little things, and the fact that they present themselves in such a way that you can interact with them, they're kind of like waking dream motifs, but there's a way of somehow boogieing with them. There's no question that all of that is going on right now. Now, it may well be that the impetus, the sensible, rational thing is to say, well, all right, Paul, you'll get a kick up the arse to finally finish this goddamn thing. But on the other hand, of course they haven't got the faintest idea. I'm deliberately provoking the process by being here right now and talking about it all. And I'm hoping, just like the whole thing with Maslow, and you talk about peak experiences and you start to generate more peak experiences because everybody realises they're getting their own versions of that, they already know it. So that's what I'm throwing all at you. I'm hoping that my sense is this is a law of nature, and my sense is in certain respects this is going on for everybody, but depending on how full on you are with your engagement with this material, I'm a writer and it's paranormal material and I'm used to this stuff, this is how I roll in Glastonbury. It's more extreme in me, but it's still something that effectively must be a law of nature. So with all of that, I just say thank you for listening to me, thank you for inviting me. It's been an absolute hoot. Got somebody over here, okay, yeah.
Yeah, hopefully this is quite a provocative question, especially in this room, and it's really to David, Paul and Gary about this afternoon's material.
Yeah.
I suppose my question is, why is all this stuff important, like library angels and precognition and all of that stuff? I guess I think, well, is it to answer Einstein's question? I think he's supposed to have asked, is the universe a friendly place? And to feel like, oh yes, the universe is a friendly place. Is it so that the woman remembers the soap and the baby doesn't roll into the river? If the more we pay attention to things, the more they happen, then in terms of human evolution right now, why is it so important that we pay attention to these phenomena?
Well, I'm a history freak. When I go in Glastonbury with Maurice Nichol, I'm also grooving on Arnold Toynbee. I do believe in big cycles, and I do believe, for example, Jung, in Flying Saucers, says that, what's seen in the sky, these mysterious, whatever they are signs, they are portents of a whole bunch of things that are literally rising from beneath the horizon to become visible again, that are major signs of. We'll call them the gods and goddesses. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's going around in a massive great cycle. The old deities of the Hermetic, Gnostic era and so on are becoming more real to us again. The things of which Jung found at very core of his life, the seven servants of the dead, all this sort of thing. All of this is rising again. So there's a way of thinking and feeling which is arising in a collective consciousness to break the trance. We've got to a point of extreme importance where we've become so immersed in the density of the material world that it's become dangerous. We have lost ourselves to the extent that we no longer understand the extraordinary beings that we are and the level of responsibility that we have for how this plays out. So all these extraordinary mysteries, all this alluring stuff at its best, rather than giving us a sense of cosmic horror, gives us a higher emotional feeling of the game being afoot and above all of it being worth playing. You know, that would be my short answer to that.